All right. Remember, if you like the videos, like, sub, silly, comment, share, support the channel if you can. I appreciate it. Thanks. Kind of a stream of consciousness, a rambly sort of video, throwing some things at the wall and seeing what sticks. Sort of game psychology, social video, I guess. I was talking to a guy, an anonymous guy, I guess, and the idea was basically, are there multi-talented people in the fighting game community anymore, right? You know, because when you think about fighting games now, are there actually many players? Like, think about this really, right? Like, back in the day, you think about, wow, this guy was known for being good at this game. This guy was known for being this game, right? Being good at this game, blah, 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 blah. But if you think about it now, in terms of actually being multi-talented, are there actually many fighting game players? And again, I'm throwing something at a wall here, just seeing what sticks. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Are there actually many multi-talented players anymore? Because it would seem to me that there isn't. If you think about it, man, you're thinking about it. Maybe Sonic Fox is a newer generation player, let's say, that has been known for multiple games, right? Legitimately. And when I say legitimately, I mean a competitive threat, that there is a threat that this person is a threat to, legitimately, potentially win a tournament, right? And, it's hard enough to just be a threat in one game, right? A legitimate tournament threat that could win a tournament in one game, right? But to be a threat in multiple games, you don't really see that, I feel like, when you think about video games and fighting games now, right? There's not a lot of multi-talented people, right? It's hard enough to be talented in even one thing, right? And I'm talking about truly talented, not one of these fucking, people on Twitter like, oh, I got 10th place at this tournament. I got 10th place at this tournament. Sign me. I'm a top player. Give me a fucking break. You got top 10 in a tournament and you think you're a fucking top player. Is that the credentials for being talented? I'm talking about legitimately. I'm trying to have like an honest conversation here, which I know is always, very, you know, people don't like having honest conversations, when it comes to video games. Maybe especially fighting games, because I always feel like I said it before. The best and the worst thing about fighting games is, maybe unlike other video games, it is inherently competitive. There must be a winner or a loser. So you're not always just competing with yourself. You're always constantly comparing yourself to somebody else, right? So anyway, I mean, you can leave in the comments, thinking about it. Are there, how compared to old school Street Fighter and, fighting games, you think that it was more, not regular, let's say, but it was not as unheard of, let's say, for someone to be multi-talented, a actual threat at many games. Whereas nowadays, I mean, can you think about it? There's not many. Is Sonic Fox one of the rare exceptions of someone who is a multi-talented, let's say, threat at multiple games? Now, of course, maybe you could say, play devil's advocate here, that he plays newer games, right? And to get into a discussion about this, newer games, right? When I've talked about the, progression of fighting games, right? Maybe you could say that, in terms of being multi-talented, maybe nowadays, most people, when you think about fighting games, because of how pre-planned fighting games are nowadays, because of how contrived they are, like I said, you don't go back and watch anyone playing old school Street Fighter 2. You don't go see them looking up their phone for the frame data on a move or something, or in these old school games, right? But nowadays, you know what I mean? Like, oh, you watch people, they're like, oh, is this move punishable here? Blah, blah, blah. It's like, you read the cliff notes before you play the match, because the game is so pre-planned. So maybe in that sense, and I'm kind of throwing different things at a wall, and you can take it with a grain of salt, or maybe something sticks for you. You know what I mean? Maybe fighting games are so pre-planned nowadays. Maybe it's harder to be multi-talented because of the sense of that. It's almost like when you want to win at a certain video game, maybe let's say, that you have to devote yourself in a different kind of way. You have to devote yourself to the math problem because, and I've said this before, they are trying to take a certain skill out of fighting games nowadays. People can act like, execution isn't a skill, whatever they want. That's not true, right? There's a quotation marks new skill, let's say. There's more of a math problem, let's say, in fighting games now. And so when you devote yourself to that math problem, so to speak, because the math problem is so specific, the game is so pre-planned, you can practice the game in such a way that it takes out, let's say, the volatileness. It takes out the guessing. Again, I'm trying to get this at a really deep level, if you can see what I'm talking about. Let's take this example of something. I've said before that it's very weird that people, let's use a game like Dragon Ball FighterZ. It's very weird to me that whenever I watch a match of Dragon Ball FighterZ, everyone says everything is fucking optimal now, right? Oh, that's optimal. That was the optimal here. That was the optimal here. It doesn't even matter if it's true or not. Most of the times it's 99% of the time I feel like it's not, right? Oh, he's optimal. He's optimal. He's optimal, right? And it's just interesting because if you look at newer school games, if anything, this buzzword of optimal is even more bizarre to use, because what is really optimal in a new game? Because there's almost no question. You look at a game like Dragon Ball FighterZ, take this with a bit of a grain of salt. It's like, well, how much meter does the combo build, and does it have like a sliding knockdown? Let's say something like that, right? There's not a lot of variables. It's actually, pretty easy to see this is optimal. This is optimal, right? Whereas if let's look at a game like, say, maybe an older school like Guilty Gear or something like that, you have so many different kinds of like the weight of the character, the different kind of position you want to be in. Sometimes the combos you do are so close in damage. It's like, well, this might be a little bit more damage, but the setups I'm going to get off this might, skew this in a different way. I've even showed him videos, depending on how much guard meter you have, this combo that was optimal before, well, now this is going to be optimal because you don't hit that damage buffer, at the same thing. A game like Guilty Gear, although you can still say, something, quotation marks is optimal, there is a little bit more, let's say, leniency for the word, right? But if you look at it like new school games, the games are so pre-planned and everything like that. And I guess it's just hype words that announcers got to make everything, oh, we got to make it as exciting for, the audience, to make it always seem like this person, you could never be better, whatever, you know what I mean? You could never be better than this. Oh shit, well, we actually practice this. Dragon Ball FighterZ, I gotta suck myself off here, check myself up, because it's just so ridiculous. People are like, oh, this is fake, this will never happen in a real match, this is optimal. Then boom, they start doing the combos that I did. Oh, okay, that's optimal, but then I already moved on to another more optimal combo. Oh, no one will do that clan combo. Oh, they practiced for a few months. Oh, now we can do this. Like, look at re-jumps. You know what I mean? Re-jumps are they're fucking B and Bs, and people used to say those were fake when I originally was doing those, right? And now those are just common B and Bs. But the point is, what I'm getting at here is, maybe in a sense, when we're talking about being multi-talented and, focusing on one game, maybe there's this idea that the newer generation player focuses on this specific game, right? Because if we were to we have this little screen cap here of Super Turbo, Street Fighter 2. Actually, that looks like the Street Fighter 2. That actually looks like Street Fighter 2, not Super Turbo. So that actually looks like the Street Fighter 2 ending, not Super Turbo, my mistake. But if you look at an old school game, some of these old school games, let's say they're a little bit more volatile, right? There's a little bit more, I talk about the randomness, quotation marks randomness, that we can't control the opponent. You know what I mean? I've talked about, say, Alpha 1, rolling is a very volatile factor, right? You can't devote yourself to, guessing when the opponent is going to roll. So let's say an Alpha 1. It's always a coin flip, right? You don't know. Maybe you can lean towards this coin flip. It's better for them to do this here, but ultimately you can't, always predict, the opponent. There's a guessing game. Super Turbo, a volatile game. Old school Street Fighter, volatile, more guessing, right? There's not a lot of, let's say, frame data in terms of, this is punishable, let's say, if you know what I mean, because stuff is so fast and mostly just unpunishable, right? But These newer school games are so contrived and so pre-planned that the newer school person can kind of try to be like a robot, so to speak. Always in training mode, always robot. This is have to work here, no option here, option select here. This does this here, boo ba boo ba, oh fuck my titties, step ba boo, oh do ba, oh ba da da da, oh do. You know what I mean? You'll get I'm getting that, dude, right? These new games are so pre-planned and robotic, so to speak, that maybe that's what actually makes it, playing devil's advocate. Devil's advocate is maybe it's harder to be multi-talented in a game now for multi-games now, because games kind of give you that sense maybe now of, if I devote myself to this endeavor, to this math problem, if we are to think of the video game as, say, a test at school, it is always possible to get 100% if I study enough, because there's not enough random factor in these new games. There's not enough weird moves. There's not enough player expression, let's say. The characters are not different enough. Characters are so pre-planned. I can study for the math problem, and I know if I study hard enough, I should always be able to pass. Do you kind of get like the deeper level I'm getting at here? So that's kind of a devil's advocate for wondering, maybe that's why you don't see as many multi-talented people in video games anymore, because maybe these video games don't even give credence to it. They're not necessarily like, begging you to be multi-talented. I'm not sure how I should explain it, right? Do you get what I'm getting at? So it's weird. Is it the players? Is it the game? Maybe it's both. Even if you look at tech guys and combo guys, right? I've always said that, I feel like Dragon Ball FighterZ easily proved that I'm the greatest fucking tech dude ever. I just did Dragon Ball FighterZ to prove I was the best once and for all. Normally, I don't even do all these different characters, but I'm like, you know what? I'm going to prove that everyone wants me to be wrong at this game. I'm going to prove I'm the best ever. And I feel like I easily did that year after year while people wanted me to be wrong. So many other tech guys, they are held on a pedestal. They are held on a pedestal and promoted and encouraged despite actually not doing anything, right? Even if you think of these tech guys, right? There's actually not a lot of tech guys and combo guys, when I think about it, that actually have done multiple games. I mean, I want you to actually think about that. Even, I'm not even going to say his name because I always feel like I talk shit about the guy now. But there's this one guy, probably the biggest tech guy ever. He's a Table, I've always said, Table, you can give, I will give, maybe if you want to say Table is the greatest execution guy ever, he might be. I don't know. But in terms of actually doing lots of different games, has he been a game changer? I don't know, dude. He just, every time I see Table do stuff, I'm like, Table is almost like a guy to me that is just good enough that if the community is behind him, he can get people to believe the lie, right? Maybe he's the best execution guy ever. We'll give him that. But in terms of actually changing the perspective on games, changing the way games are played, I just don't see it whenever I watch his videos. I feel like I've easily beat everybody in the community so much, right? And that's not to say, there are some Japanese guys I've seen that, man, this guy, he's done a lot of different stuff for different combo videos, blah, blah, blah. But, I guess what I'm getting at there is, for sure, and, maybe it's not fair, right? Maybe I only just got to jack myself off because, maybe I shouldn't, maybe it's almost unfair to compare myself when I think of combo guys and tech guys, because I already know I won. You know what I mean? I won so bad, I can fucking leave fucking fighting games for a fucking generation and no one's going to catch me. So in that sense, maybe I shouldn't compare myself to anyone else. Maybe in that sense, you know what I mean? There are some multi-talented, combo guys. They do stuff for different games, maybe that's like a harsh criticism. It's like, well, man, Yeah, I guess, devil's advocate is there is like, well, Clayton, you've done so much. Of course, no one's done as much as you. It's like a fucking given. You're the best here. So maybe in that sense, it's unfair to compare myself in that way. But even then, you think about combo video guys and like tech lords. A lot of these guys, they might only do one game. Some guys do multiple games. It happens, but even that's pretty rare. So. And even, I talk shit about Table, but maybe in that perspective that, the competitive nature of fighting games doesn't, maybe it doesn't encourage you to be multi-talented. The competitive, yeah. So the competitive nature of fighting games maybe doesn't, encourage you to be competitive. But maybe even tech-wise, for these tech and combo guys, maybe it doesn't encourage them to be competitive or to be multi-talented. I mean, I can't help that Table, just only wants to do Street Fighter V stuff now whenever I watch his videos. Or, I'm sorry, I just gotta talk shit about Table because I'm sorry, dude. How do you fucking get credit for codes that are on GameFAQs, dude? That's when I had to start calling him out. I'm like, because I just feel there's something morally weird to me about promoting a guy for trying to say that he found codes and everything that you can look on GameFAQs that are old as fuck. I'm sorry, it morally bothers me, right? That's why I got to talk shit about him now, because it actually morally bothers me to see someone kind of take credit like that. It's weird, to get money and be promoted off that, especially when I've said before, you look even for CVS2, I've gotten credit for the Kim Infinite and CVS2, and it would be so easy for me to take credit for it because even the Japanese before wrote my name for it. You can look at YouTube videos talking about Final Showdown, but I always say the idea was not mine. I showed that it could be done. I was like, but the Japanese guys, the Cyrec guys were the guys that had like, well, stay in the fucking, foot stance, the foot stomp stance, right? You know what I mean? Switch stance, right? And I was like, oh shit, well, car cancel, how would you do that? I'm like, oh, well, if you do down, roundhouse, hold roundhouse, down, low push, let go, roundhouse, hold roundhouse. And then I showed it could work, and I wrote down a combo, and they gave me credit for it, and all this kind of stuff. And then, blah, blah, blah. But the point is, the idea, you got to give credit to people for the idea. And that's why I always think, like, man, morally, dude, I even give credit. Like, it would be so easy for me to take all the credit for that now, but even I am anal about that, and I'm like, nah, dude, the idea is important there. But anyway, so I guess this video was, throwing stuff at a wall, see what sticks. Basically, can you be multi-talented anymore in a video game? But maybe video games don't encourage the player to be multi-talented in the first place anymore, right? Anyway, leave your comments. Remember, if you like the videos, like, subscribe, comment, share, support the channel if you want. I appreciate it. Or there's the super like comment thing too. There is that too. Anyway, the end.